Welcome to the Tough Decisions Network for Entrepreneurs. I'm Dan Hanford, and my wife, Danae, and I interview successful people sharing stories behind tough decisions that they've had to make along their journey as an entrepreneur.
On the podcast with us today, we have Greg Dickerson. Greg, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we are looking forward to hearing a little bit about some of the tough decisions that you have faced and what we can learn from those. Before we jump into the tough decisions, give myself and our audience just a little bit of background about you and how you became an entrepreneur and where your focus is right now.
I'm just a natural-born entrepreneur. I'm one of those guys that started out as a kid pushing a lawnmower, going from door to door, knocking on doors and cutting grass, raking yards, washing cars. I mean, anything I could do to make money. And, my dad was a career military man. He was in the Navy right out of high school. And he kind of taught me without me knowing he was teaching me. So, for instance, the lawnmower. So he would charge me for the gas that I would use in his lawnmower to cut grass. And then he would take a percentage of everything I earned, to cover the cost of using his equipment as a rental. If I used the car for anything, I had to bring it back full of gas. So he taught me the cost of overhead at an early age. I've just always kind of had it in me. I went in the Navy right out of high school, didn't go to college, and I always wanted my own business. I was just born that way. That's just what I wanted to do. And after I got out of the military, I've done two things in my life, restaurants and construction. And I was working in a restaurant, and there was a guy doing an addition on it, and he hired me to come clean up after him. And he took a liking to me. I'm a hard worker, and I'm a quick learner. And I just started following him around to different job sites. And I would do side jobs on my own and things like that while I was working in restaurants, and I was managing restaurants. So I was getting a business education while I was working construction, getting a trade education during the day. And in 1997, I decided to move to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I wanted to open some restaurants down there, and I bought a house, and I was trying to get an addition put on the house, and I couldn't get anybody to return my phone call. And I had some, carpentry skills and handyman skills that I'd built up in the construction trade along the way. So I said, if this guy's that busy, there's got to be an opportunity. If he can't even return a phone call, then there must be an opportunity. And so I decided to start a handyman remodel company instead of a restaurant. And that was 1997, 98. And my first year I did $250,000 in sales. 7 years later, we were at $30 million, and we were one of the largest builder developers in the area.
Wow.
And during that time, I also started 12 other companies from the ground up along the way that were all ancillary to the construction industry. So it's a plumbing company, a pool, spa, landscaping company, hurricane shutter company, painting company, electrical company, had a couple of restaurants, had gymnastics, trampoline, cheerleading school, which wasn't related to construction, but I built the building. But anyway, so that's my story in a nutshell. So it's been 20 years now. I've been self-employed 21 years now, and I've done over $200 million in real estate deals, bought, developed, and sold over $200 million personally, and started 12 different companies from the ground up.
Wow, 12 different companies in 7 years. I can't imagine what that must have been like.
So I'm a leader, delegator, motivator. So what I did was I would find an individual, or they would come to me. That's how it all happened. In each case, the individual came to me, and I coached them and did it through them. So I just coached them and mentored them, and they did the day-to-day. I just told them what to do.
So you really have the business expertise, I guess, and a lot of these other people had the skills or the technical expertise to do the jobs.
Exactly. And that's what you find, especially in the trades. You find really skilled craftsmen, tradesmen, and operators that know how to do what they do. Restaurant operator might be a great chef, but they have no idea about how to run a business, how to lead, how to delegate, recruit, hire, train, manage, how to run the numbers, all those things. So that's what I would bring to the table, was that expertise that I learned. Even though I didn't go to college, I was very self-educated. I read everything I could get my hands on. I paid for seminars, training courses, and then made a lot of mistakes. So I learned a lot the hard way. But restaurant was a great education, the restaurant business. I worked for a company called Lone Star Steakhouses, and they had a really good business training program, and they were all about the numbers. And restaurants, construction, they're really similar in terms of very thin margins, and you really got to watch the numbers. And you're leading a lot of people, a lot of employees. So that's what I would do. I would just bring my management philosophy in, and I would teach them how to be leaders. I would bring, the first thing I would do, any business, the first thing, your first hire in any business to grow and scale, is you got to have an office manager that can wear a ton of hats. So that would be the first thing I'd do, is I'd have an office manager / bookkeeper / administrative assistant / marketing assistant / right?
Right.
You find that person, And I had a bookkeeper, office manager bookkeeper that ran my construction company at 30 million, all of those real estate deals and all my other companies. She helped me keep track of all that, one person.
Wow.
So she was good. She was good. So that would be the first thing I would do is help somebody find that administrative person, and then everything else grows from there.
Right. That's a really neat story. And I love that you learned so much outside the four walls of a classroom, because there is some value to that book learning. But I know just from our personal experience as well, there's so much that just can't be taught until you get out there and do it and figure it out.
Yeah, I think education is great. And most of my executive level employees were all college graduates. I used to require that in my construction company. They had to have a degree in either construction management or engineering or something like that. And then, my employees had accounting degrees and marketing and business degrees and things like that. So, yeah, I think education is great and it's valuable. But if you look at the statistics, most of your more successful entrepreneurs didn't go to college or didn't do well in college.
So with all of that experience, then let's jump into a couple of tough decisions that you can tell us about and that we can learn from. And we like to start with the first one being a tough decision that maybe didn't turn out the way you would have liked, but it's still something that you're glad you went through because you learned a lot from it.
They're all tough, starting with the decision to step out on your own full time. So that was the hardest, biggest, toughest decision, was to say, okay, I'm going, and then just go. And it was against the wishes of my wife at the time. But, I did a restaurant venture that did not work out great. We lost some money on it. And I believe in people. I love helping people. I love coaching people to success. I had a couple of people that I backed in a restaurant venture, and I loaned them the money, and I got them up and running, and I, helped them with all their systems, and I signed on the lease for them and vouched for them. And, they were a young couple, and they were trying to get a foothold, and they worked hard and they did well the first season, but they ended up having some relationship issues, and they separated and ended up leaving town and left me high and dry, didn't pay me back, and left me hanging on the lease on the building. And, it wasn't a huge loss, but still, it's just one of those things that it was a tough decision deciding to back them and not be involved at all. Usually if I did something, I was in control. This one, I just flat out loaned them the money, gave them a little advice, and just kind of helped them. And I wasn't involved, and it didn't turn out so great, but you learn through those things.
So have you, in similar situations like that, have you found a balance or maybe a happy medium, we might like to say, in loaning money and being involved to a certain extent, but not having to run it yourself?
Yeah. So every other case, I was in control, but I didn't run it myself. So that was really just the main difference. Was every other instance, I put money in, I backed people, but I maintained control. I was the owner of the company, and they either were a partner, a minority partner, or they worked as an employee for the company until I sold it back to them or sold the company in general. So that's what I did every other case except this one. I just didn't want to be involved in it. They were doing, late hours, and they were doing a nightclub thing, and that's just not me. And like a bar, it was a restaurant bar kind of thing. And I just, I'm not a bar person, so I didn't want to be involved. But hindsight being 2020, I could have made that work if I would have kept control of it and kept a tighter rein on it.
So shifting gears a little bit then, talk to us a little bit about a tough decision that you struggled to make, but in the end, it turned out really well, maybe even better than you thought it would in the end.
So, there's a lot of them. They're obviously real estate deals, but from a business perspective, I started out working out of my house and doing everything myself, doing the books by hand, all of that. And, there's a lot of little tough decisions along the way, but probably the first one was your first hire. When you first start out in business and you're growing, that first hire is a very difficult decision. And that was my office manager bookkeeper that was with me my entire career down there. I met her through working in a restaurant down there. She was keeping the books for all the restaurants. So she was very good at multitasking, and I knew she was special. So I was like, I'm going to recruit her. And I started her part-time, and then she flourished into more than I ever hoped for. And then the decision to lease my first office warehouse for the construction company. So, even though I had her, I was still kind of working out of my house. And then it came to a point to where, okay, you either grow or you just do this. And I'm a risk taker, and I'm a growth. I like to scale. So I signed my first lease, and that was scary. And it was only $800 a month, little office warehouse. And I just remember that being scary, stepping out and doing that. And then I went from there to a 3,000 square foot office. That was $3,000 a month. And that was another big scary time. So each monumental step in the growth of your company, if you're somebody like me that just came from nothing and nowhere, I had no money. I didn't have anybody backing me. I didn't have family that were in business teaching me. Literally, it was me and what I learned in the books I was reading and the people I was working for. And that's how I learned. And then I went out there and did it and figured it out. all of those things were scary because I didn't have anybody like me behind me going, it's going to work out. You'll be fine. Don't worry about it. This is how it works. This is what you do. I just didn't have that. I was like, gosh, I'm paying $800 a month here. Do I really want to sign for $3,000 a month? How am I going to make that work? But it just did, and it worked. And we ended up being a $30 million company, and I sold it. Everything worked out, but it was scary along the way here and there.
So was that first big step to lease your own office space? Do you think that the effects of that were more about the effects it had on you just being a real business, if you will, or was there something else that really made that a great idea and a great move for you at the time?
I needed the space just because we were growing and we were doing some things. But yeah, it kind of legitimizes you as a business a little bit, or at least I thought it did. Things were different back then. I mean, I didn't even send my first email till like 2001, right? 2001. So it was a really different way back then. The traditional business would get a storefront and you'd have trucks on the road and you would do all these things that made you look like a legitimate business. Now I'm like totally outsourced. I don't even have an office right now. All of my people, I manage teams and lead. So nowadays my philosophy is totally the other way around. It's not about what your office looks like. It's about what your results look like, right? So yeah, it did legitimize the business a little bit, and it makes you commit. When you sign a lease and you got to make that payment, you commit.
Right. There's no going back after that point. And you are very right about how things have changed so dramatically about the way we look at business. People today don't think it's a big deal if you work from your home. 25 years ago, that would have been like, oh, you can't afford your own office. That kind of thing, I think, is just very different. What are some strategies that you like to use when you are facing a tough decision? How do you approach that decision? How do you get to a place where you're ready to make a choice and take a specific direction?
Well, I have a strong faith, so I pray and I talk to God and I look for that leading and that guiding in every aspect of my life, all day, every day. And it was funny, I was talking to somebody about this today, but that's not enough. So you can't just pray and expect the answer, expect something to happen. You have to go out and you got to get it done. So when it comes to a business decision, the truth is in the numbers. So depending on what it is, there's always some sort of hard data that you can look at that will help you make that decision. Business is about the numbers. So whatever that decision is, it's usually, from a business standpoint, a lot of times it's based on numbers. Sometimes it's based on personnel. Sometimes it's based on a strategy. So you just really need to put it down on paper, measure that decision against your business plan, against your numbers, and against your personnel needs and issues. And the answer just reveals itself. You just know what to do because business is pretty cut and dry. It's numbers, it's people, it's operations, it's, profits and process. So it's usually easy to measure that and make those decisions from a strategic standpoint.
We're going to take a quick break and hear from one of our show sponsors. When we come back, we'll talk to Greg about some of his favorites as it relates to his life as an entrepreneur.
Have you ever thought about investing in real estate, but find yourself so busy that you don't have time for it? Do you have FOMO, which is the fear of missing out? At HanfordCapital.com, we help investors with passive real estate investments that project better returns than traditional investment vehicles such as the stock market. If you'd like to find out more about our passive real estate investments, visit HanfordCapital.com. That's HANDFORD capital.com. We will jump on a call with you to discuss your investment goals and to see if our investments are a good fit for you. This advertisement is not to be construed as an offer or recommendation to buy or sell a security. Visit HanfordCapital.com.
We are back and we're talking to Greg Dickerson. Greg, we like to call this section of our show the trifecta, and we just have 3 quick questions about some of your favorite things that you use all the time. So our first one is, what is your favorite technology that you use in business every day that makes your life easier?
So I would just say technology in general. I use technology. I do about 80% to 90% of my business on my jumbo iPhone. I've got the biggest one you can get. So I use that. So I use Office 365. So it keeps my contacts, calendar, emails, all that in one place. It syncs across all my devices. I use Mac and iPhone. So all my pictures, everything just syncs in the cloud. So just technology in general, the cloud, everything I do is cloud-based. All my accounting, all of my documents, everything. It's all backed up. And I've got all of my information going back 20 years, all my tax returns, all my deals, all that stuff. I'm very organized, very detailed, so I can pull pretty much almost anything up at any time. It's all backed up in the cloud.
What's a favorite quote that you've heard that has helped you as an entrepreneur?
probably one of my favorite quotes is just, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And, again, I'm very faith-based, and I always think about that in any times with challenges. But from a business perspective, probably Zig Ziglar was one of my favorites. And he would say, if you help enough other people get what they want, you'll ultimately get what you want, not in a manipulative type of way, but in a very sincere, honest way. If you care about other people, if you look to serve other people and help other people first, then everything you're trying to do will fall into place. And that's me. I'm just wired that way. I love to build people, help people, and give. And I like building things. So that's probably two of my favorites right there.
And what's a favorite book that you've read that has helped you make better decisions as an entrepreneur?
Gosh, there's so many. Going back to some of the first ones, obviously everybody read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that's kind of what sparked, a lot of building businesses to use to invest in real estate. So that's what I did, and I read that book. And then the second one was The Power of Positive Thinking. And of course, other than the Bible, my favorite book in the Bible is Proverbs. It's all about wisdom. I use that all day, every day. We all do. We don't even realize it. A lot of our little wisdom sayings come from that book. So those are probably three of the most fundamental. And then Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I mean, all of those together kind of sum up in terms of business strategies. And then I have a management philosophy. I read The 1 Minute Manager, and there's a series of books that became my management philosophy. And that's how I built and grew my company so fast, was using the 1 Minute Manager system of management, which is recognizing that people are your most valuable resource, and you get the best results from people if they feel good about themselves. It's all about, recruiting, hiring, training, leading, motivating, delegating, and all the levels of that in terms of managing people. So those were the books that were the most effective in my career. Of course, I read books constantly, but those are the foundation of what achieved the most amount of success for me in the least amount of time.
Very good. And what's the next thing for you right now on your vision or dream board?
Well, right now, I just turned 51, and I've had big companies with employees my entire career, so I've kind of wound all that down. Everything is outsourced, and I'm working on big deals, bigger projects, and fewer. So again, my philosophy now, my business philosophy is to make the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of energy and effort possible. So I'm an efficiency junkie right now. I try to be as efficient as I can in everything I do and lead teams of experts. So I'm very focused on bigger projects, bigger opportunities, and just kind of consolidating my life and being able to do and be anywhere I want at any given time.
Greg, how can the listeners reach out to you if they're interested in finding out about some of your businesses that you have, or just want to find out more about you? Is there a way that they could reach out to you?
Yeah, so my website, gregdickerson.com. My phone number is 434-326-3903. And all my information is on my website, gregdickerson.com. And I answer the phone. I'm happy to talk anytime. I love talking to people and hearing what they're doing and helping people with their business.
Well, Greg, thank you very much for being on with us. We really appreciate it. I think it's going to be valuable for all of our listeners who hear this interview, and we look forward to following you and hopefully maybe having you on a future podcast.
Yeah, anytime. I enjoyed it, and I appreciate you taking the time out today.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Tough Decisions Network. Be sure to visit toughdecisions.net to gain access to show notes for this episode and to join our free weekly entrepreneur email, where we will send you news about the latest technology for your business, inspiring quotes, and the latest books for entrepreneurs. That's toughdecisions.net.